Notes for Math Teachers, Part 2 by Jeff Simpson. When I went to visit our friends Keith and Ann, Keith asked me, with a gleam in his eye, if I'd like a cup of tea. A cup of tea sounded good, but why did he have that look of humorous expectation on his face? It felt like he was planning to play a joke on me, so I hesitated. What should I say? Well, my curiosity finally got the better of me, so I said, somewhat guardedly, okay, I'll have some tea. But I did wonder what was in store for me. I want to see what you think of this tea, said Keith. The first time I tried it, I thought it was terrible. Well, that didn't sound like a very good recommendation. What was I getting myself into? Anne said, oh, Keith, go ahead and tell him the story, and I'll go put the kettle on. So, here's Keith's story. He had bought a box of tea, a new kind that he had never tried before. He boiled the water and steeped the tea bag in it for the usual amount of time. Then he tried it, and it tasted terrible. He looked on the box that the tea came in and noticed that there was an 800 number and that customers were invited to call and give the company comments on their tea. So, to Anne's horror, Keith actually called the 800 number and told the guy on the phone that their tea tasted terrible. The guy on the phone asked Keith if he had read the directions on the box. Keith replied with some exasperation that he had been making tea for some years now and didn't really need to read the directions. No, the guy said, you really need to read the directions. And then he hung up. Somewhat taken aback and a little bit miffed, Keith went and got the box that the tea came in, and then he noticed that the directions said to add generous amounts of cream and sweetener. So he got some cream and sugar and mixed them into his tea, and it tasted really great. About that time, Anne arrived with my tea, including generous amounts of cream and sugar, and it did taste great. As I sipped my drink, Keith explained to me that the tea was specifically designed to taste like a vanilla hazelnut dessert. And without the cream and sweetener, it simply would not taste the way it was supposed to. So, that's Keith's tea story. Sometime later, as I drove away from my visit with this congenial couple, I started thinking about Keith's tea story and how it related to helping kids with math. It struck me that kids are like different kinds of tea, and that just as some kinds of tea require special preparation to get the best results, some students need to be taught in certain ways to get the best results. The problem is, tea has directions right on the box, but students don't come with directions on them. Some learners need a context of pictures and stories to be able to grasp new concepts. And if they're not given the stories and pictures, they simply will not understand the new concepts. But those students often are not even aware that they need those stories and pictures, so they don't ask for them. Or if they are aware, they may be afraid to ask for them. Many students also have significant gaps in underlying concepts and skills that make the current concepts and skills inaccessible. And if those underlying gaps are not effectively addressed, the current learning goals are very unlikely to be achieved. But students generally don't know how to address those underlying gaps by themselves. They require professional assistance to get the job done. Some students need you to ask them the questions that they should have asked themselves in order to think through a problem successfully. And if you do not ask these leading questions, those thoughts will remain unconsidered because the pupils just don't know how to ask themselves the right questions yet. And some students need much more review than others. And if they don't get the amount of practice that their minds require, they will not develop the fluency needed to access more difficult material. But without proper guidance, how can they practice doing the things that they don't know how to do until they can consistently do them correctly and with ease? Even when students are aware of their special preparation requirements, they're not usually prepared to do anything about them. They need the teacher to discover what their special learning requirements are and then address those unique needs on a day-to-day basis. Wouldn't it be nice if these special preparation specifications came with the students, like the directions on a box of tea? Sometimes educators are completely unaware of these individual needs. A strong preference for their own learning styles can blind teachers to the needs of others. For example, I remember a woman in Kansas whose husband was convinced that the only way he could teach her how to drive a stick shift was in complete darkness, because, well, that's the way he learned. His premise was that his wife should learn how to feel the H shape of the gear shift, and the best way to do that was in the dark, where feeling would be her only option. It was a clever premise and had worked well for him when he was learning, but he refused to take into account that his wife really needed to see the H first. She had no idea what the H he was talking about, and it was driving her crazy. A tendency to be judgmental can also obscure the educator's vision so that they cannot see the individual issues that really must be attended to. In this regard, I think of a middle school I once visited to do classroom demonstration lessons for the teachers to observe. The administrator accompanied me to the first classroom where I was to work and proceeded to introduce me with the following words. "Class, this is Mr. Simpson." The class all politely responded in unison, "Good morning, Mr. Simpson." Then, turning to me, but speaking so the whole class could hear, she said, "So, tell me, Mr. Simpson, if the students are behind in maths, wouldn't you say it's because they're either lazy or stupid or just not paying attention and following directions?" Apparently, those were the only possibilities in her mind, and she was looking for some validation and reinforcement of her professional opinion. Frankly, I was stunned that anyone would even think that, let alone actually say it to a group of students. But apparently it was not merely a rhetorical question. She looked at me expectantly, waiting for an answer. I really didn't want to contradict this lady. I could see that she was very highly regarded at the school, and her opinion carried a lot of weight. So I hesitated with a thoughtful breath, trying to hide my shocked reaction, and said, as philosophically as I could, there could be some other reasons too, with a look of, you never know. I hastily added, well, let's get started with the lesson. I then proceeded to do a guided discovery math lesson that was specifically designed to take different learning styles and needs into account. And to everyone's surprise, except mine, all of the students were able to successfully pay attention and follow directions, and none of them appeared to be either stupid or lazy. In order to present a lesson such as I did, where all of the students were enabled to succeed, you have to have a good idea of what the students already know, and what they don't know, and how to most effectively cause them to know it. So in upcoming videos, I'll share with you some quick and effective methods of informal assessment, as well as a method for clarifying concepts with a multisensory guided discovery process, and a system of rapid reconstruction techniques for developing fluent memory. But that's enough for right now. See you later in Notes for Math Teachers Part 3. Please share these ideas with other people that can benefit from them. And thanks for watching.